Inspired by Love is a podcast hosted by Rachel Love, dedicated to promoting inspiration, hope, and giving a healthy dose of God's love for every aspect of life. Rachel is a seasoned inspirational enthusiast who uses witty commentary and biblical truths for real-life solutions, offers business strategies, health and wealth tips, and self-love care. Unlock the power tools to dig deeper, discover your untapped potential, and live your best extraordinary life. Here's your host, Rachel Love.
Hello, everyone. Hello. And welcome to the
Hello.
show. Okay, Charne, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a little bit of your background and tell us what seat you are running for.
Absolutely. So happy Halloween, everyone. My name is Charne Tunson. I am running for seat number 1 for the Los Angeles Community College District. And I am an K through 12 educator. I started off teaching in LAUSD secondary schools. And then after 10 years, I transitioned into school administration. Last year, I spent my first year being a school principal. And this year, I am actually supporting other school principals across LAUSD to help them navigate instructional technology through distance learning. So I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome.
But most importantly, I am excited to be able to represent our LAUSD students at the secondary higher education level.
Yes. Awesome. Very, very good. Miss Sylvia, can you give us a little bit about your background and what seat you're running for?
Absolutely. I am Sylvia Brooks-Griffin. I'm running for seat 3 on the Los Angeles Community College District Board of Trustees. My background is in the arts and in education, and I am a community volunteer. I believe that service starts at home. It starts first. It starts locally. And we grow and we get better from one community to the next. So my goal is to always be involved in my community locally, and then watch that grow, see where else that goes. So that's why I'm mostly interested in the Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees. It's our most local higher education, and it's where I think I can make the greatest impact.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Nichet, will you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, please?
Yes, thank you. I am Dr. Nichet James Gray. I am running for LACCD Board Seat 5. I have been blessed to serve in many different capacities in the educational arena. So I've worked private, public, and for-profit. I've worked as a K-12 teacher, college teacher, and most recently as an administrator.
Wow.
I'm also a former LACCD student. I too went to West LA, but I also went to Valley, Trade Tech, and Mission. So I made my rounds. You know, I had kids very early, got married early, and had kids early. So wherever my kids were going to school at, or wherever I was working, or whatever their schedule was, I would go and take classes wherever the closest college was. So I have a wealth of experience and knowledge to bring to the table, as well as my kids. I have 3, well, not kids, but my 3 adult children. They've all gone to LACCD schools as well.
Wow. Awesome. That is amazing. Well, Miss Raquel, please tell us a little bit about your background and what seat you are running for.
First, I want to thank you so much for having us on your program. We are so honored to be with you. So thank you so much for that. And yes, Raquel Watts, seat 7. And my background is actually legal. So I'm a legal advocate. I've worked as a senior hearing representative for major corporations, as well as currently Mitchell Law Corporation, where I represent injured workers, and I advocate for them on behalf of their workers' compensation benefits and making sure that they get what they need and they deserve while they're injured. And then with the crossover with LACCD is the fact that I went to USC, and while I was at USC, I was very involved in recruitment and retention of students from community college over to the four-year university while I was there. And then after I graduated, I did that as well as an alumni. So I'm passionate about our kids getting an education so that they can be an economic force in Los Angeles.
Wow. Each one of you have a unique background, but it touches on, who you are as a person. So I just want to mention that everyone is wearing pink, and I'm so happy because today is the last day of October, and we are celebrating and supporting those that are in the fight for breast cancer awareness. So if you have not gotten your mammogram, please do so, because we know that early detection helps to save lives. We're also dedicating this whole month to the Denise Roberts Breast Cancer Foundation. So thank you all for rocking your pink with me. And now we're going to rock on with the LACTD 4. So has anyone ever ran for an office?
No, we are all
No.
first timers.
First timers.
Yes.
And grassroots.
Very
love
grassroots. Yes.
So really, I'm also alumni, West LA. And it's just important to let the community know why there needs to be diversity on the board. There needs to be equity on the board. We want to have fairness. So can anyone share the reasoning for deciding to run this at this time?
Yeah, I'll start off. For me, it started off very personal because at the time I was a principal for a small charter school in the Watts community. And at that particular school, we had dual enrollment with LA Southwest College. And what I found was that not only were our students not prepared for college life, but the college was not prepared for our students. And what that means is that, students didn't really know what was 100% expected of them, because how they are treated in a high school classroom is very much different from how they are treated by a college professor. And then vice versa, the college professors had never worked with high school students. And in some cases, we're talking about ninth graders. And so there was a huge cultural disconnect between the professors and the teachers, and also from the administration of the college. I didn't feel like there was a sense of advocacy for my students at that particular school. And I was disappointed because that particular administrator was African American. And I felt like I needed someone to be the champion for those students and not just say, oh, well, maybe they're not ready. Maybe we'll try again next year. But instead, let's come to the table. Let's figure out some solutions. Let's put some supports in place so that we can bridge that gap. And so I felt like I would be able to bring my K through 12 experience of what our students need to the other side, so that when they do get to community college, because they can get there with a high school diploma, they're able to thrive and complete their academic goals. So that is the reason why I did it.
That's so important.
I want to point out too, just something else that Charne touched on. 85% of the students at LACCD schools are first generation college students. So that means no one else in their family has ever gone to college. They don't have the experience of their parents or their cousins or their aunties or their uncles to help guide them through this completely new journey, right? So having the support of administrators, having the support of board members who understand what the first generation college student journey is and the kind of support that first generation college students need is so, so, so important. So one of the reason that Charne just told you that she ran is just so important, because we have so many students who are for the very first time attending college, 85% of them at LACCD. So I'm always in awe of my running mates personally.
Right. But in addition to that, there's so much information out there that is not provided to students, and particularly to students of color. So for example, Charne was talking about the dual enrollment program. A lot of people do not know that if your child is in K through 12 in Los Angeles, they can go to a community college for free. They can go to community college for free. Now, while they're there, they can be working on credits that will apply to high school. They actually get double credits, as well as working on education towards an associate's or a certificate or whatever they wish to, at the community college level. But that's not information that's readily available to most students. And there's only some schools. I was really excited to hear Charne speak about the school she worked at had a dual enrollment program with Southwest, because in my experience, none of the schools in the inner city, none of the schools in the Black communities had dual enrollment programs. Now, I did move out to the Valley, where the school that my kids went to at the time, they had a dual enrollment program, and that program actually was at their school. So my kids were able to go to school. They're in high school. And after they finished their high school courses, they were able to take college courses there at school. And I think all students should have access to that, not just some who live in certain neighborhoods.
So is that actually pushed from a local level?
You know what? It's the responsibility of both the community college district and the school district, because
the LAUSD district.
Yeah, and not just LAUSD, because the school I was at, it was an independent charter school. So it's any school within the LACCD has the opportunity. It takes work. I mean, I was behind the scenes with a lot of the meetings. It does take a lot of work, but for me, that's what I signed up to do as an educator, is to advocate for students. And that's why I fought so hard with the pushback from the administration of that college, because for you can just wipe your hands and say, oh, okay, well, it's not going to work for these kids. But these are that's my community. It's where I grew up. That's where I was raised. And those kids miss out on so many opportunities, and they don't have enough advocates for them. And so I felt like I needed to fight to ensure that they had that opportunity in 4 years to walk away with a high school diploma and an AA degree, ready to transfer to a 4-year college or university, or start in whatever trade that they were after.
Wow.
And that speaks to how representation is so important. If you have board members who represent the demographic of who attend LACCD schools, then you have that extra passion and that extra desire to see them succeed. Right now, the LACCD board has 7 members. There's 1 woman, and there are no African American members of the Board of Trustees.
And that has to be
not acceptable, because LACCD is 56% female. It's over 80% people of color. So if you don't have leaders who are representing the demographic, then they're not putting your needs first. And we need to see students' needs be put first.
Yes. Raquel?
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I'm back. Anyway, man, I wanted to chime in, though, pick up where kind of Sylvia left off in, and that is saying that, our kids, when they see themselves in leadership, they see themselves in the faculty and their teachers, they see themselves in professionals that surround them in the community, they are empowered to fulfill their dreams. And so it's unacceptable not to be able to see yourself in the Board of Trustees. It's unacceptable not to realize that you have that support, especially at a level that is supposed to inspire the community to be able to have an education for free for the first 2 years. The LA Promise was actually enacted so that people would understand this is a rite of passage from you from high school. It's for you to be able to have 2 years free of community college. So there's some issues that is not not a perspective that the board has visually, so that the students can take advantage of that inspiration.
Okay. So really, what do you see other than representation? What else is lacking on the board that you would like to change? Anyone?
Some of the
We can all speak to
some
that.
of the some of the decisions that they have made. So for me, I have an issue with policing in schools. You know, a lot of people see the prison to pipeline, you know, through our schools, and they have police in the school. And the idea is that, you know, we pay more for prisoners than we do to educate our kids.
That's
Okay.
something.
It's if you saw the dollar amounts, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's something like $300 per kid and 11,000 per prisoner a year. So I'm
Wow.
off, but that's how large it is. My numbers
Yeah.
aren't exact,
Mhm.
but it's that extreme. Um, so one of the things that I take up issue with the current board is that they have a $24 million contract with the LA Sheriff's Department. There's 9 campuses that's spread out across the 9 campuses. But East LA has the largest population with 60,000 students. And in 2018, they had 8 crimes on their campus. And those we're not talking, you know, murder, killing. They were not major crimes. It was nothing that, you know, the local police department could not have come and handled at that time. So I think that we can take those funds and reallocate them to create a free and reduced breakfast and lunch program
Oh,
similar to
wow.
what students have in K through 12, because we're talking about kids who are predominantly living in poverty. And so when they come to college, the only thing that has changed for them is that they're now in college. Their
Yeah.
financial situation has not changed. So that means they're still coming to school hungry. And we know this because 65% of the students have reported being food insecure. So why don't we take some of that money, reallocate those funds, create a free and reduced breakfast and lunch program? So that's one of the big issues that I have, you know, especially when we're talking about 85% of the students are students of color. And we have a huge issue with our Black and Latino community and the sheriff's department. There's big issues, you know, as we all know with that. So this can be a time to, you know, for LACCD to step up and do something different in terms of their safety on campus. Not
Yes.
just policing on campus, but let's look at this a little bit different and have safety on campus. And that's a whole nother, you know, piece of my platform where I talk about creating a different idea for community safety as opposed to policing and sheriff on the
Awesome.
campus.
Awesome. Charne?
Wow. I think for me, one of the challenges that I see with the current board is that they are comfortable and complacent with being just a governing board. And what that means is they sit back in their meetings, you know, twice a month, and they make decisions, but they're not boots on the ground, you know, hands getting dirty, seeing what's going on these campuses and impacting change. And whenever a board member is comfortable and can say, oh, well, you know, we're just a governing board, then you don't need to be in that position. And I have always felt like the best educators are those educators that are right there next to the students. You know, the best leaders are right there next to the teachers and the staff and finding out what is going on, seeing for yourself, and then coming up with some innovative solutions. You know, the very first day that I spent as a principal last year, the first day of school, what I did, I was out there serving lunch. Why? Because number one, I needed to see the face of every one of my students.
Yes.
And I needed to greet them and to welcome them and to introduce myself to them. And I continued that practice, you know, as often as I could, because any job, you know, any job that's good enough for any one of my staff members is good enough for me. Similarly, on the last day of school, you know, right before we got the school closure due to COVID, I was walking the halls with Lysol wipes, going into the restrooms, wiping down handles, sinks, toilets, everything, because I felt like I needed to ensure personally that my students were going to be safe. And so if you are not able to dedicate yourself fully to the needs of the students and the staff that you're serving, then you don't need to be in that position. And so just being a governing board is, to me, is just a poor excuse for why you haven't been able to do what you needed to have done?
Well, you know what? That's the prerequisite of a true leader, and that's what I'm seeing. Sylvia, what do you have to say on it?
Well, my concern is that many of the board members who sit on the board currently have been there since 2011. They've been there a long time, and they've sat on this board through numerous financial scandals, allegations of funds being misspent or misappropriated, funds not being used as efficiently and as effectively as they can be. And I think there's some issues with transparency, really trying to understand what oversight is in place for financial decisions that are being made by the Board of Trustees. Be sure that we can ensure the integrity of that board with the proper oversight. So my big concern really is that transparency. LACCD Board of Trustees controls, I think it's $5.5 billion.
Wow.
That's the LACCD budget. It's over $5 billion. Over $3 billion of that $5 billion comes from measures that we voted on as members of the California community. We voted to allocate funds for capital improvements on our LACCD campuses, and we as voters should believe in the integrity of how those funds are being spent, and that requires the kind of transparency that the current board doesn't have and doesn't advocate for.
That's a shame. So while we're on that, let's transition into your biggest platform for your campaign is representation. So since it is such a large community, but lack of diversity, how do you think you guys, or one of you or each of you, if you are on the board, how do you think you will be able to change?
Yeah. For me, we talk about the fact that there is not an African-American representative on the board and that there's only one female representative on the board. I was very tentative to speak out about the female representative on the board because she happens to be the incumbent that I am running to unseat. But you can't just be a female on the board for sake of saying there's a female on the board. If you are not advocating for the women that are a part of the Los Angeles Community College District, you have to have the courage, and you have to be bold and resilient and want to step up to fight for women. In the revised budget that the board recently presented, where they broke down, how much they're going to spend on information technology restructuring, how much they're going to spend on their equity and justice framework, how much they're going to spend on safety. And then the very last item was how much they were going to spend on Title IX. And Title IX is the federal laws that protect women in the workplace. And it was less than $600,000 that they had allocated toward Title IX. And that's the problem. That is a problem, especially when we've already said that women make up the majority of students in the LACCD. So you're going to give the majority the least amount of funds to ensure their equity and safety and opportunities and so on and so forth. And so, these are things that we have to change from day one. If we don't have board members that are willing to take the leap and have the courage to make the change that needs to be made, then you need to step aside and bring in the representatives who will make that happen. You also have to have the courage to go against what maybe the majority is saying if you don't believe in it. And that is something that we have not seen with this board. And, we've spent a lot of time speaking about the 4 incumbents that are running, but there's still 3 other individuals on that board that haven't had attention brought to them and their beliefs and things that they've done. But we know it's going to happen because their election is up in 2 more years. And so, we need to have a representation, not just someone who looks like the students or is the same sex as the students, but someone who is going to actually fight and speak up for the students and the staff. And I believe that the 4 women that are on your show right now are those that can make that happen.
Awesome.
I was just going to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
When we talk about representation, we talk about the lack of representation on the board, but there's also lack of representation in the faculty.
Yes.
So, we need more faculty of color, particularly Black faculty. So in that area, we have to work on recruiting and training more faculty of color. And then also talk about representation on the board with regards to students. There's 9 different campuses, and there's one student who's voted on from all the campuses to represent the students on the board. And that student doesn't have any voting power. They're kind of just there in theory, really.
Name only.
And so one of the things that I'm advocating for is that every campus gets a student representative to be on the board, so that it'd be 9 extra board members, because all of these campuses are different. The needs of a student at West LA and the demographics are very different than Pierce, very different than East LA and Southwest, So we're looking at these campuses that are in different neighborhoods with different demographics, have different needs and wants, and therefore they should at least have someone at the table as well. So representation, when we talk about running on representation, it's beyond just serving on that board and being, a representative of color on that board, but it reaches beyond that, in the faculty and the administration and in the student representation on the board.
And just to add some numbers to what Nichet is saying, so we can really paint the picture. So out of 7,000 employees across the LACCD, there are 8 Black administrators, there are 88 tenured professors, and 176 teachers, who are not permanent. So we're talking about a total of 264 Black staff members out of 7,000 employees across the entire district. And that was according to the 2019 fall statistics.
Well, now let's transition, because we have been affected by a global pandemic. So how is COVID affecting education as we know it? We're talking about safety. We're talking about the concern for students as well as the educators. What has been done, or what are they going to implement?
You know what I was going to say too, Rachel? It may be good with our group, because all of us have a wealth of information, is if you designate the question to the person.
Okay.
In regards to COVID, I think that we all know that our community we have to make sure that our community has, first of all, the connections. They have to have the computers, which I believe are being provided to them. But if they have the computers and they don't have the wireless connection, then they have difficulty taking their classes. The other thing is if there's other items and accessories that are needed, because some students have disabilities. So we need to make sure that those students have, if it's headsets, if it's braille connections, if it's special needs where they actually may need someone to assist them to take the class. Are these students, being paid attention to, and are they getting the resources that they need? And then outside of that, where's the accountability to make sure that the students are being able to stay on task to reach, their graduation or their certificate program in the 2 years, because this pandemic has actually thrown off schedules. So how are we making sure that they're on task to complete their goals? So all of these things matter during COVID, and they need to be paid attention to.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to recognize also that COVID, this global pandemic, impacts people of color and people in lower economic stations more than others, right? And then we have to look at the LACCD demographic. can understand that many of the students come from below the poverty line, or they're close to the poverty line, and they're being impacted more directly than other people are too, right? So on top of already suffering from food insecurities and housing insecurities, now you've got this giant pandemic that's impacting. A lot of students have to quit school so they can work and help support their families. They have to quit school so they can buy groceries, help support their families. So there's a greater impact for our LACCD students with COVID, and we have to find as Board of Trustees and as a college campuses ways to support them through this. We have to find ways for example, there's students who are part of the Los Angeles community, the Los Angeles College Promise, where they're in a program to receive their 2 years of free school, but they might have to drop out because of this pandemic, right?
Okay.
Well, can they sign back up? Do they have the ability to rejoin that program? This is something Charne brings up, and I think it's such a good point. How do we address the deficits that COVID is bringing to those students, and how do we find a way? And we're nowhere near this point as of now. How do we find a way to get them back on track?
Yeah.
We're just trying to get through this, but there's a future beyond this, and we need to be prepared for that too.
Absolutely. I know I was reading somewhere and it was saying there were a lot of students that were even homeless. And so I know that impacts them as well. So I'm sure that would probably be within your security and, the issues that you see, with students trying to work or trying to, just keep up. If they don't have a computer, if they don't have the Wi-Fi, if they don't have the necessary things to plug in, and if they're homeless,
place to plug. If they don't have a secure place to just to lay their heads, how do they focus on academics when focus is on just survival? And that's part of the problem.
And we have to also remember that a large part of the student population are over the age 25. So you're talking about working mothers, working parents. You're even talking about seniors who are trying to, get their career restarted or start a new career. So these are people of our community that are not just, underage or, 18 through 25. We're talking adults, who have lived life and are finding themselves in situations where they need to educate themselves for one reason or the other.
So I wanted to ask about if you were elected, and I'm going to go through the line here. So Charne, if you were elected today for seat number 1, what would be your first order of, this is what I'm demanding change in? What would that be?
So like Sylvia mentioned, one of the things that I talk about as being my first orders of business is to take a look at the current LA College Promise program, where students are able to attend college for 2 years for free if it's their first time. And due to COVID, we know that many students have had to withdraw from school to care for loved ones, to secure employment full time and things of that sort. So I want to work with the mayor to ensure that there is an amendment to this legislation or some type of accommodations made for students who were once a part of the LA College Promise, but had to withdraw due to COVID-related challenges, to ensure that they're able to rejoin the program, to complete their course of study with all of the supports and resources that they were originally entitled to.
Wow, that's very good. Sylvia, the same question. What would be your first order of business for your seat?
LACCD does have a COVID global pandemic response in place. My first order of business would really be to focus on that plan and see if it has the flexibility it needs to address the increased impact COVID is having on our student population. Because again, we are the ones most impacted by COVID. So I want to see a plan put in place that's going to provide services and supports for those students to help them along a little bit more.
Yes. And Nichet, what is your first order of business?
Considering that we had so many students reporting to be food insecure prior to COVID,
Wow.
my first order of business, first day one, would be getting that free and reduced breakfast and lunch program up and running. Because we're talking about students who were hungry before COVID, and now you put COVID in the picture, and
Yes.
we have this unemployment issue now. We've had so many issues, that COVID has added to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to probably be looking at more students who are hungry. So if we can provide breakfast and lunch, that's something that students don't have to worry about, that'd be 2 meals out of the way, which means that now, maybe instead of working 3 jobs, they just have to work 2. So they can come and
Yes.
try to finish school. Or instead of working 2, maybe they just now have to work 1 because they know they can eat when they're at school, and so that's something that they don't have to focus on. So that would be my first order of business. Some of the incumbents like to talk about food pantries that they've started at, this campus or that
Mm-hmm.
campus, but we're in a situation where we need more than a pantry. We
Yes.
need to provide
Absolutely.
these students with some daily help.
Mm-hmm. And Miss Raquel, since you are a legal advocate, what would be your first order of business if you win your seat 7?
Well, I have a quote that I like to use on some of the calls, and that is that quote from Miles Monroe that says, it is not, when you do not know the purpose of something, you will inevitably abuse it. Sorry about that, guys. That
Yes.
word gets. And I think going back to the purpose of what the community colleges are there for, and it's for education. My first item, I think, would be is to hear from the students, which we've all talked about,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
making sure that the students have a voice on the board that counts. Because I think a lot of times we disregard them as not knowing what they're talking about, when in
Yes.
actuality, they're the future. And so their concern should be of utmost importance. And then from there, I think diversity inclusion is another issue that the board severely needs to address. And that's across the board, from students to faculty to the way that they interact with the community. So those would be some of the hot button issues that I would address right off.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, the last question, or close to the last question, let's talk about the value of community college and what it brings. Is there an advantage to attending a community college opposed to going straight to a 4-year university right out of high
Absolutely.
school?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I think community college, especially the way that LACCD is set up with the LA College Promise,
Mhm.
it's a hidden gem. Because if you look at it, a lot of people like to think that people go to community college because they don't have the grades to go to a 4-year university. That's how most people think of community colleges. But community college can provide you with 2 years of tuition-free education.
That's
2
awesome.
years where you can get your credits that you need and then transfer to that 4-year university. And you save 2 years tuition and fees, right? And then
Yes.
down the line, you have fewer student loans you need to worry about. You have less future debt. And if you look at it from the long-term perspective, thinking about what your future debt might be for going to a 4-year university, it's like a no-brainer. You can
Yeah,
save, in addition to getting a great education, you can save some money for your future.
exactly.
It's a huge advantage, and I don't think enough people really recognize or think about it from that perspective.
And
And then
Charnay, oh, say, go ahead, Raquel.
no, Charnay, go ahead, Charnay, it's fine.
So I definitely agree, even though I took a different
Mhm.
route. I am a huge proponent for HBCUs. I graduated from Clark Atlanta University, and leaving Los Angeles for those 4 years was probably the best decision I made. However, I know that there is not enough information and not enough, I guess, resources toward shifting our Los Angeles students toward that direction. The LACCD actually has a program in place that is not being utilized enough, called Emoja. And part of that is an articulation agreement with over 17 historically Black colleges and universities across the country, of which Clark Atlanta University is one. And so for students who may have the desire to attend an HBCU, but may not be in the current situation to make that happen right out of high school, an LACCD school is a perfect segue, a perfect way to, like Sylvia said, knock out those 2 years, knock out your first degree without any student loans. And then you transfer to your HBCU of choice and are able to complete that program of study in 2 years with your BA, possibly continue on to your master's, and even a doctoral program, all while getting that experience that, the HBCUs have to offer. So yes, I think that community college is a great way for someone who wants to go away to an HBCU, but may not be able to just yet. Come on to an LACCD campus and let's, make that happen.
Awesome. Nichet?
Yes.
Nichet, you want to answer that one? Okay.
Well, I mean, mine has to do with what Sylvia said. It's cost. It is so it's so expensive to go to school in America. And I say that because my kids have gone to school abroad and all of the students go to school for free in other countries. But the cost is just cost. You can get an associate's degree, you can get a jump start, on working towards a 4-year degree at another institution. It's just all about cost. I mean, in addition to that, the community colleges have some great instructors, some really good instructors, So, I mean, I'm a proponent of community college. Like I said, I've gone to several. All of my kids have gone, and transferred on. It's a good opportunity. It's really a good opportunity from an academic and a cost perspective.
Is it not being promoted? I'm sorry.
I'm going to segue to a different part of this conversation, so you go first.
I was just going to say, is it not being promoted from high school to, so they can?
I think a lot of enough. Yeah, I mean, it is at some schools, but not enough. When you talk to college counselors or college administrators, what makes them look the best? How many students they're getting into 4-year universities, and that's always the goal of high school administrators, high school counselors, is to put those students into 4-year universities, And we have to change that mindset and change that perspective. A lot of people look at community college as an extension of high school, or, something that is not as academically
glamorous,
flattering or sound, as say, a 4-year traditional 4-year university. So we need to change that mindset, which one of the other things we need to do is we need to market, as a governing board, we need to market the colleges a little different, market them. There's so much to offer, not everybody wants to go to a 4-year and get a 4-year degree, in these schools, they offer certificates. They offer all kind of training. I mean, Trade Tech has one of the best culinary programs, not just in LA, but in the United States. They also have a top-notch fashion program. They have a great fashion program. So, these community colleges have programs that people can go and really get a good education, a sound education, and leave there and work. I'm not even talking about, the plumbing programs, the electrician, there's so many different opportunities that the community college provide.
That's something I was going to add to the conversation, is that sometimes students are not in a position to be able to get into the 4-year universities because maybe they weren't as focused in their high school a year, and they need a little bit more help. They need a little bit more time. They need maybe a more intimate environment. So by sending them to community college, you give them an opportunity to get up to speed with their goals and with their and be a little bit more focused, so that when they do finish their last 2 years at a 4-year university, they go in achieving their goals and obtaining the major that they really, really want. Because listen, when I was at USC, I remember the first 2 years, you're still trying to figure out what you want to major in. And so
Right.
while trying to figure that out, you're wasting, for me, when I was at USC, it was almost 30,000 a year. So that was $60,000 that my family had to make sure was covered while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So
Mhm.
sometimes, going to a community college would afford you the opportunity to have a little bit more time on your hand, to be able to explore different things. And if you change your mind, it wouldn't break your family's heart. Like, what you need what 2 more years of what? So there's a lot of reasons why, it's better. There's an advantage.
It's
And
so true. And you
to
can
both
try
those
different
points,
things. I mean, maybe you want to take a cooking class, but because, you like to cook, but you don't know if culinary is for you. So, you can
Exactly.
take a cooking class, take a sewing class, take a plumbing class. There's classes that you can take. Whereas if you go straight to a 4-year university, you can't necessarily take things out of order or take things how you want. There's a
Mhm.
solid plan that you have to follow. But at the community colleges, you can, like Raquel said, you can explore. You can
Mhm.
look at different things,
and
find out who you are.
it's important to remember 4-year colleges are not for everybody.
That's right.
College is not for everybody. It's not the path that everybody wants to take either. So if you have the opportunity to get an associate because that's where you want to be, or if you have the opportunity to take a trade and learn a skill and have some mentors and some apprenticeships through a great program like the ones they have at Trade Tech, and again, this wonderful hidden gem that has so many opportunities that people just don't know enough about.
Yes.
Well, here's what I'm hearing from you all, that the Board of Trustees has a responsibility to, one, represent each student. That it seems like that's missing. That's a big missing piece. It
Mhm.
also has a representation issue where there are not enough either teachers of color or even the board members of color. So
Mhm.
that's the second issue. So there needs to be a little bit more active involvement. So, like you said, to advocate for the students, advocate for the teachers, the instructors, where these dollars are being spent, having transparency. So they are called on the rug on certain things. Like if it's a budget issue, is it being misrepresented? So it's
Mhm.
like all these things that you have brought to the forefront is now up for our voters. They can actually say, I like what she's saying, and I want to see her in the seat. So, Charne, give us 3 takeaways that you would leave for someone who is undecided, because we still get to vote on November 3rd.
Absolutely. I think one takeaway is just what you're doing if you're watching this stream, and that is to be an informed voter. We can't just rely on blanket messages. We can't rely on those fancy, glossy mailers that are now like overrunning our mailboxes. We actually have to do research and listen to the candidates that are running for these different offices and see if what they have to say resonates with your heart. I know that my husband and I the other day were looking through all the judges in our particular district. And the first thing I did was I wanted to look for their websites for a video where I could hear their voice and see their passion. And many of them didn't have it. And that was troubling to me, because how can I vote for someone that I haven't heard from directly? So make sure that you look for people that resonates with you, and not just relying on the blanket endorsements and flyers and things, because anyone can spend, some pretty pennies to have a beautiful flyer put together and sent to your home. The
Yes.
second thing is, I think you need to look for people that have experience in different areas. And one great thing about our slate is we are diverse. We are not all educators, but we are all advocates. We're advocates in some form or fashion. And that is what we know students across this country need, are people that are going to advocate and stand up for them. And then the third thing is you want to look for people that have courage, that are courageous and bold and willing to take the leap to make it happen. And I know that you see that with us four amazing women.
Yes.
You know, we speak a lot about representing people of color, our students of color, our staff of color, but I'm going to be unapologetic and ask that we represent the Black students, the Black faculty and staff, because that is who needs it the most right now. And it's not unique to LACCD. It's in everything in this country. We see that Black people are under attack in many forms or fashion. But what we can't do is have our students be under attack, because our students are the future. So what we have here are 4 Black women that are willing, ready, and able to flip the board, to get in there day one. You heard what it is that we intend to do day one. We were very clear about that, and we're ready to get to work.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. Miss Sylvia.
I have just one thing that I want to share with folks before they, if they're undecided, if they're still thinking about voting. Because I think at this point, if you're still undecided about just voting in general, then you've forgotten your power. You've forgotten how powerful your vote really is. Yes. You may be hearing people telling you that your vote doesn't matter and that, you have no impact on what's going to happen. And there may be some truth to that on the national level. But when you drill down and you come to the state level, and you drill down and you come to the city level, and you drill down and you come to the community level, right here at the community level, your power is so much more than you even realize.
Ooh, yes.
You have the ability to impact your neighborhood right now with your vote. And if you're undecided, I just want you to hold on to that and know that there is power in your vote. You have to exercise it. And you have to know that there's power in your vote, but so many people are trying to convince you that there's not.
Wow. What seat are you running for, Sylvia?
I am running for seat 3 on the Los Angeles Community College District.
All right. And Charne, you're running for seat number 1. Awesome. And Nichet?
I am seat number 5. And piggybacking off of what Sylvia said, power. There is also power in education. So I want to make sure that you educate yourself. If you have not voted yet, educate yourself about what is on that ballot. Educate yourself about the propositions and the people who are running. We've talked about these glossy flyers that you may be getting. There's even commercials. I never before, and I pay close attention to politics, I've never before seen commercials for this seat, for LACCD. I've never seen commercials. I've seen commercials on the national, level for a local seat. So make sure you educate yourself about who is running, why are they running, and follow the money trail.
Follow the money trail.
The money trail. Anytime you talk about somebody having a commercial on a national television channel for a local college board, there's something to that. And you need to ask yourself, why? How? How did they get that much money? Where did they get that much money from? You know what I'm saying? So educate yourself, follow the money trail, and make sure that you vote.
Awesome, awesome. Miss Raquel.
Yes.
Seat number 7. Tell us.
Seat number 7. God's perfect number. Anyway, I wanted to say that, I think about how we all grew up. And back in the day when we grew up, the village was around. So you could be out late and Auntie Susie, who may not have even been your auntie, but she lived on the corner block, would say, get in the house. Or, Uncle John would say, let me see your grades. I'm going to give you some money for your grades. I mean, the community, the village. And I think what you see here amongst the 4 of us is that we're like mother bears. We heard the call and we came running because there's something we have to do to make sure that the students get what they need. When you talk about integrity and when you talk about resilience and when you talk about tenacity, you look at these four women right here. We will do what we need to do. We are not moved by people's money. We're not moved by special interests. We're not moved by anything but the bottom line, and that is the students getting the educations that they need in order to be an economic powerhouse here in Los Angeles and wherever they may just decide to reside in the future. And I think when you look at the down ballot, which we've been trying to tell everyone, the down ballot is the most important part of the ballot. But we focus so much on the presidential race because we have been sold that that's what really matters. But the down ballot affects our household quicker than the presidential race. If you don't have the right people in the college board at board of trustees, if you don't have the right people in the councilman, the mayor, the governor, the prosecutor's office, these positions affect our families right away, and we will know it. These are what our dollars immediately go to support. So you have to take these positions serious because the down ballot is a serious vote. And I know this year, out of all years, people are very concerned about their vote. They're concerned about the status of the nation. They're concerned about the status of their communities. So taking time, doing what the other slate has mentioned, and not be moved by the dollar and the glossy flyers and the fancy commercials, but realizing who has the community in its heart, and it's shown through their words and their actions, and that's
Wow,
what we
wow,
stand for.
wow.
ACT.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you because you have really just educated me as a resident of Los Angeles. But hopefully, when we repost this, that other people will be able to listen in and hear the very important topics and points that you all mentioned that are valid, that really need to change. I think you're bringing a wealth of experience, your passion, and just your ability to lead is what is valued here. And so I want to wish you all a very successful campaign. Regardless of the outcome, you are already winners, all of you. And if it should go a different way, I definitely want you all to run again because what you have said today needs to be heard. It needs to be heard. So I just want to thank you for coming on, Inspired by Love. And as always, I leave my listeners with this: be inspired by love. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Inspired by Love. Join us every Wednesday for the juice to be inspired. Like, follow, and share this podcast. Be sure to leave a positive rating.